I'm really grateful to the folks over the last week or so who've broken down the way that ICE's $50,000 signing bonus is really deceptive and has a number of those agents over a barrel. So it's essentially a sign-on and retention bonus. They get somewhere between 10 and 15K after they finish their initial round of training, but then they receive subsequent payments over the next 2 to 3 years. And also it includes a service agreement. So if they quit any time before they've completed 5 years of service, they will have to pay back those previous bonuses. The full amount that DHS paid them, not the amount that they took home after they paid income taxes. So they could essentially end up owing the federal government a big chunk of change, more than $10,000, if they are fired or they quit before those 5 years are up. And a number of them feel deceived and trapped. Now, we've heard that they're not too cheesed about it. I mean, maybe you should have read the fine print in your contract before you decided to sign up and be part of a lawless, violent paramilitary force. And also, like, maybe if you go work for criminals and con men, But I've been thinking about how much that has negatively impacted morale for these federal agents. The pay is not as good as they thought it was going to be. The work is harder than they thought. It's not actually like their video game fantasy. Likewise, they're not being welcomed as heroes liberating the American people from violent gangs of immigrants. Instead, the American people overwhelmingly hate them, like fucking hate their guts, and they're getting screamed at all day long. They have people in their faces saying, quit your job. Quit your job. Why are you doing this? How do you look your mom in the face? How do you look your daughters in the face? How can you sleep at night? Quit your fucking job. It's nothing like they thought it was going to be. And I realize they're trying to project this image of they're big and powerful and confident and they're having the time of their lives. They're not. They're miserable. I keep thinking about this New York Times piece that came out on January 26th, a crisis of confidence for ICE and Border Patrol as clashes escalate. Current and former officials describe growing frustration and disillusionment with the Trump regime's approach, even as they support the goal of immigration enforcement. Newsflash, y'all, we don't actually need them to suddenly become woke and change their politics. We just need them to be non-compliant with the regime and not want to do this miserable, cruel, evil, awful job anymore. Oscar Hagelsieb spent nearly 25 years as an immigration officer and special agent, proud of his work enforcing federal laws. But watching the chaos unfolding in Minneapolis and the fatal shooting of a U.S. citizen there on Saturday, that's when Renee Good had been killed, but before Alex Preddy, Mr. Hagelsieb said he felt anger and despair at how the Trump administration was deploying his former agency. You're not addressing the problem by throwing a 500-pound gorilla into these inner cities, he said. He voted 3 times for President Trump, by the way, and he retired from DHS in 2023. It's completely unfair to the agents who have been put in this position. They're causing chaos and unfortunately costing lives, he added. There's only so much they can handle before bad things start to happen. Mr. Hagelsieb's comments reflect a growing sense of fear, frustration, and disillusionment among some current and former immigration officials at the department. In interviews with the New York Times, more than 20 of them expressed anxieties that the administration was sending federal agents into situations in Minneapolis and other major cities that were increasingly dangerous, both for them and civilians they encountered. They said long hours, arrest quotas, and public vitriol were a significant toll on morale. Many also worried that the fallout would irreparably damage how the public perceived the 2 main Homeland Security agencies involved in Mr. Trump's crackdown, Immigration and Customs Enforcement and U.S. Border Patrol, hurting long-term recruitment and retention. Several said they worried that Democrats would draw on voter outrage to shut down ICE, which has been the most publicly visible arm of the immigration operation. 3 days after this article was published, a poll came out showing that 46% of Americans wanted to abolish ICE. According to a new Marist poll from 4 days ago, 65% of Americans now say that ICE has gone too far. That's up from 54% last June. Now keep in mind, DHS is only 23 years old. ICE is not old enough to rent a car. ICE is only the same age as my eldest kid. Now, the most recent YouGov poll came out before Alex Preddy was murdered, but even then, it said that more Americans support abolishing ICE than oppose abolishing it. And now, because of overwhelming public pressure from us, the voters, on our elected officials, we're suddenly hearing abolish ICE, dismantle DHS has become a very popular talking point, policy position from Democrats. Just a few weeks ago, flaccid, hesitant Democratic leadership wasn't even going to stand in the way of a funding bump for ICE. Hakeem Jeffries wouldn't even whip his own party. And Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats were just going to let it roll on through. It's because of us, the people, being pissed as fuck and letting our electeds know that they are taking any sort of stand right now. So don't let anybody tell you that there's no point in pressuring your electeds. The only way they will move in the direction that we want them to is because we are putting mass sustained pressure on them. You do have a power. Your outrage has a power. Electeds are listening. They are paying attention to these polls. And they're paying attention when you call every day. When thousands of people call them, they're paying attention. And likewise, seems like DHS agents are also paying attention. They know that they're deeply unpopular. They know that they have now created a massive backlash. Their extreme lawless actions have now, for the first time, pushed the American public and very middle of the road politicians to turn against them, to want to dismantle their organization. We all now can see that ICE and DHS are actually harmful for the American people. So yeah, good luck finishing those 5 years on the job and getting your retention bonus. Good luck. We'll see if ICE is even around in 5 years. Actually, if we don't want it to be around, it's up to us to push to make sure that it gets dismantled. Don't disengage that throttle, folks. Okay. Some also criticize the more aggressive tactics being used by Border Patrol, as well as the combative approach of leaders like Greg Bovino. Now, Bovino has been removed. Tom Homan is still in place. Tom Homan, who was accused of taking a $50,000 cash bribe, although the FBI shut down that investigation at the behest of Kash Patel. So I'm sure there's nothing Mr. Homan won't do that Daddy Donald wants, because that investigation could just get reopened again if he declines to participate in this ethnic cleansing, in these violent, lawless tactics. But Greg Bovino pissed a lot of people off. Mr. SS in the U.S., dressing like he's the American Gestapo, he was pissing people off. Another concern, according to the New York Times, is that Customs and Border Patrol have basically no experience policing an urban environment. Not their first-person shooter video game fantasy. They were dropped into a situation that was extremely stressful. They're not trained. Their anxiety is through the roof. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. There was growing concern that they were being used as pawns. Stephen Miller wants nothing more than for an American citizen, or even better, an immigrant, to kill an ICE agent or a Border Patrol agent. That's his fashy wet dream. That would just make his absolute fucking day if an ICE agent was killed. I think a lot of agents know that. They know that the regime doesn't give a shit about them. They don't respect them or the work that they're doing. They're being used. They're being used. And the brown shirts are the first ones that fall in the night of long knives. The brown shirts are the ones that end up getting prosecuted and going to prison. They're expendable. They're expendable. They're used for a purpose and then they're thrown away. Additionally, current and former DHS agents expressed concerns about the tactics being used in Minneapolis, saying that shooting people with pepper ball rounds and spraying chemical agents at nonviolent protesters were far outside standard practices in law enforcement. One former agent said his conversations with current Border Patrol employees reflected a grim situation. Morale is in the dumpster, he said. Many of the agents will be very happy to go back to the job they were trained for on the border. Now, the New York Times was careful to say it's hard to know how widespread this sense of discontentment is amongst all agents, even amongst those on the ground in Minneapolis. Now, in the hours after Alex Preddy was murdered by federal agents, the Times spoke with former and current DHS officials. Many described the deaths of Mr. Preddy and Renee Good as points of no return in the relationship between Homeland Security and members of the public. Most said they were unhappy with the sharp language from White House and Homeland Security officials, especially their quick rush to conclude that agents were blameless and Mr. Preddy was at fault. Many also said that Mr. Trump's mass arrest campaign was proving counterproductive. We lost all trust, one current ICE official said. I'm not sure I can see how we exist 3 years from now. Agents also described Stephen Miller's 3,000 arrests per day quota as a reckless push for deportation numbers that puts the public and law enforcement at great risk. One former agent said, I'm Hispanic, I look Hispanic. I would be highly upset if someone came and asked me if I was illegal because I'm Hispanic, but that's precisely what ICE is doing now. Several agents said, this isn't what we were trained to do, but you're doing it anyway, aren't you? Not too late to quit. Quit your job. Quit your job if it's not what you were trained to do and you think it's wrong. When morale is bad, they no longer believe in the mission. They're no longer confident they're going to get paid. That is an opportunity for us in the resistance to be exploiting, to undermine DHS as a pillar of support.